go and talk about the 3 lessons you can use to get better at math that you're not going to learn. So 3 lessons you can get better at math that you're not going to learn on ChatGPT. Now, it's really important. I love ChatGPT. I actually use it today. Like I actually almost use it every single day right now, in just either helping me with, math videos, maybe checking my math work, or just using it in actually everyday scenarios. And guess what? It's only going to get used more and more by, not only myself, but for all of you out there. All right. But there are some important things that I want you to understand. And I think immediately when ChatGPT came out, everybody's like, oh, this is going to replace that. And it's going to replace this and blah, 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 like all over the world. Right. And initially you kind of like think about it and you're like, oh yeah, crap. This could like replace, everything that would be on YouTube, like as a resource. But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? If students just wanted the answers, that's been around for a very, very long time. We've had complex calculators. We have, apps that you can take a picture and get the answer. Like, the answer, or even like the explanation, which ChatGPT is getting better at, is providing detailed explanations. But still, there's some things that we are missing from there, or that ChatGPT is never going to teach you, that I think is essential for you to be able to learn, not just about math, right? Because I'm obviously a very big proponent of students having a solid mathematical foundation, but there's some other things that you guys gain, or there's some other life lessons that I want to there's some other life lessons that we can learn, not just about math, but we can apply to be able to get better at math that ChatGPT is not going to help you with, right? Because a lot of times students are like, oh, I just need to get better at math. If I just had like ChatGPT like with me all the time. I'm like, no, there's some things that you can do to get better at math that do not include ChatGPT. And I love ChatGPT. And again, it has its purpose and it has its use, and it's only going to get better. But here are some life lessons that, and I'm going to give you some examples from my own life that I was able to apply to be able to get better at math that I hope you can use as well. So the first one is hard work is going to beat talent. Now, this one, again, I know you guys like my sports analogies. I always have sports analogies because obviously I played a lot of sports. But I think it, but there are examples of hard work beats talent like over and over again. One of the things is we just had the recent NFL draft, and you notice like, oh, all these people, like they're super talented, right? And again, like sometimes people's, careers are derailed because of injury or other outside factors. But a lot of times you see, 5 years, look at the draft. Some of the most talented people, the people that were like talked about the absolute most, are just bust. They're not in the league, 5 more years. Right. And then you look at some of these other people and like, how did you make it? And you can see usually their story includes working their butt off. They worked extremely hard to be able to get to the NFL. They wanted it more. And even though some of these people might have this pure talent, right, they didn't really want it as much as those people that were working their butts off. And again, like, where does this come into play? Like people all the time say, oh, you're just smart at math, right? Oh, you're a math person. Like that's why you're so good at math. Like I'm not good at math. There's no way I could understand or learn this stuff. Right? It happens all the time. But hard work beats talent. The other thing that reminded me, I was watching a documentary, and it was on I think it was 2007 Pistons. And I was looking back and they were playing against the Lakers. It was when they won the championship. And it was like amazing. Like the team was like, if you were comparing them to the LA Lakers who had Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, like they were complete underdogs. There would have been no way that they should have won, like if you're on paper, right? But you just look at how they played the game and like how much work and effort they put in to like get to where they were at. They were just the better team. They were hard hustling, or they're a hard working team. And that's why they won. Plain and simple. They were definitely not the most talented team, but they definitely worked the hardest. And that's why they won that championship. Now, to give you a little bit of personal experience, I remember, one of the times I talk about like I got a D in pre-calculus. I talk about it all the time, but one grade I don't talk about as much was my, what was the class? I think it was called like college English, my advanced composition, something like that in freshman year. And I remember like for me to write a paper, right? I mean, a lot of you guys say, oh, I stink at, I suck at math. Like it takes me forever to do my homework. Like it takes me forever to write a paper. And I was freaking out about this class because for me to we had to write like 3 or 4 papers. I mean, it would take me maybe 8 drafts to write a paper, like forever to write a paper. And I was like, I remember like, I was very bound, because I obviously had a D when I was like in senior year. So I'm like, I wanted to prove everybody that I could be successful in college. So I was working really hard my freshman year. And so I put in the work. Like I studied everything. I rewrote my papers as many times as I possibly did. I went to the English, lab to get help with my papers, to get it proofread. I reread my paper over and over, made all the corrections I could make. And I put in a ton of time, way more time into that class than even my math class. And guess what? I got an A. And guess what? I think I'm almost positive, if I remember correctly. And again, you know how the fishing stories, they get better and better as, time goes on. But I'm pretty sure I was like one of the few A's that was in that class. Or at least that paper, or at least, that came into that. And I was like astounded. I'm like, how did this happen? There's no way. Like, there's no way I'm a better writer than all these other people. And probably talent wise, I wasn't. Like when I draft an email, my wife can write an email like in one time and it's perfect. Me, if I write an email, it probably takes me 30 minutes and 3 or 4 revisions. This is like if it was like a persuasive long email or something like that, like it would take me 3 or 4 iterations and like 30 minutes. There's been multiple times that she stopped me and be like, are you done yet? Like, can you just give me the computer, let me write the email. But working hard, guys, beats talent. It's commonplace. So how can you apply this? A lot of times people are like, oh, I'm not good at math, right? Or, math doesn't come easy to me. That's fine. Put in the work. It's natural. It's okay. It's a part of the process, but put in the work and you can be just as good, just as smart as anybody. And obviously, guys, there's limitations, right? We all know that. And I'm not saying like maybe exactly as good or as best as anybody, but put in the work, right? You're with your peers. Like if you want to get an A, you can get an A. Put in the work. There's no talent that is holding, you back. Hard work beats talent. It is an extremely important life lesson that, guess what? ChatGPT is not going to save you. ChatGPT is not going to get you over that hump. All right. So put in the work and you can get the grade that you want to get. The next life lesson that ChatGPT is not going to help you with your math, but that you can get better at math with, is understanding you are either improving or you are dying. And this is one of those quotes that I remember like someone telling me, I can't remember, it could have been sports, but I won't go down the sport idea. But it was like, yeah, it's either you're improving or you're dying. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of deep. Like dying? Like, what do you mean by that? But it's an important thing. Like if you think about like a tree, right? A tree is always growing, right? They're always getting like new leaves, new springs like going on. Or if it's not, guess what it's doing? It's dying, right? So if it's not regrowing itself, if it's not further expanding, then the tree is dying. And that's something very important for you to take away. Like when you're trying to, learn math, you always have to be trying to challenge yourself. I see it time and time again when inside the classroom. I'll go to students, they're like, okay, once they kind of got used to me, they kind of get used to like those first couple of weeks inside of the classroom. And they're like, okay, I understand what we're doing. Like I kind of got the rituals and routines of the classroom. And then they stop pushing themselves. They stop asking questions. They stop doing all of the work. They just do the bare minimum. And guess what? Then we get to a hard topic, or we get to, some hard material, and then they seize up and they're like, oh, and they just want to quit because they're like, they're not used to putting that challenge to themselves. All right. And I think it's really important for you to continually be growing, for you to continue being a student, not just of mathematics, but of life. Like you always have to be challenging yourself. That is part of the growing process. And another one, I think it was another quote from Henry Ford, I believe. I think it was like a plane takes off, always against the wind. And like you think about it, you're like, and actually this was in my classroom. It was actually hanging up on the wall and I always had it in there. Or, you sharpen a blade against you always sharpen a blade like against the grain. And it's like, you think about that. It's like, yeah, like you have to have adversity. You have to have challenge. You have to put some things to keep yourself growing, right? Because if not, guess what, guys? Think about that plane. Like think about like a big headwind, right? You're going into the plane, right? And that's how you're going to take off. But let's pretend, right, that you didn't have the propeller going on. And let's say pretend that wind kept on getting harder and harder. Like it's eventually going to push that plane backwards, right? And that's kind of like that dying approach. It's like, it's either you're going against the grain, you're making yourself better, you're working to get better, or you're getting worse. You're not getting any better. And that's something very important. And also something very scary. If you think about like what the world with ChatGPT is going to be like in the next 5 or 10 years, like think about all these ways it's going to be integrated with our life. And it's crazy. Sometimes like if you watch like a video online or you think about like all these different implications, it can sometimes be a little overwhelming. And so I want you to always kind of make sure you're thinking about this. Like same thing, if you're trying to learn math, make sure that you are always putting, excuse me, make sure that you are always challenging yourself to get better and better. Because again, as long as you are focused on you getting better, there's nothing else you need to worry about. You don't need to compare yourself to anybody else. You just focus on you. And as long as you're getting better each and every day, you're going to see that improvement by the end of the year. All right. The last thing that ChatGPT is not going to do, but it will actually help you, but it's not actually going to fully give you this life lesson, is that success leaves cues. Now you could definitely ask ChatGPT, like, hey, what is some success? What are some life lessons, that I could use to get better at math, or that will help me be a better math student? But success leaves cues. And I think this is a very important one. This was actually something I think I remember hearing from Jim Rohn about. And it's like, when you're studying, a lot of times students are like, oh, I'm studying math, or I'm studying chemistry, or, finance, or whatever else. Like, what do? You find a book about that topic. And it's like, well, what about if I want to study like getting rich, right? Like, where do you go to like do that? And then you think about it, then you find this section of like, oh, there's actually people that talk about like self-development and getting rich. And like you can study, or not as much getting rich, but like, how do you study, fulfilling your life and like everything like that. It's like, there's self-development books. Like, go and find people that have reached that pinnacle of success that you're looking for. And the same thing, guys, like with math. I'm not saying like, you look at, a lot of times people are like, oh, you're just good at math, right? But they don't focus, or they don't ask, like, how are you doing things? Can you show me like, how to be able to, how you're approaching this problem, or how you're looking at this problem, or, how I can be successful, or ask our teacher. Like, I remember when I was a sophomore in college, I remember I was extremely scared to get into calculus because my mom did not think, actually, no, that was, I was extremely scared in calculus. Like, I just had that vision of like, calculus is going to be so hard. I'm not going to be prepared for it. What should I do? And I remember my mom or somebody told me, like, go and ask your teacher, like, how can you be successful? And I specifically remember at the beginning of the year, I went up to that professor and I said, how can I be successful in your class? Like, what are some things, right? Because again, they know what students are successful in their class and what students are not. They know what those characteristics are, right? So ask, try to figure it out. Like, every teacher is going to have, obviously, like, I'm going to talk a lot on this channel, like, of ways to be successful in class, but every teacher is going to have their own course, their own chapter. That's going to be a little bit different than the other, other courses, or, other teachers. And so ask, like, learn from success, learn from people that have been successful in math, like or been successful in life, like, learn from them. Success leaves clues. And so if you want to be successful, look at math, or in life, look at people that have found success, study them, figure out how they achieved it, ask them, right? And then replicate it. It's not a very difficult process. And I know a lot of students are like, oh, well, they were just good at it. No. We disputed that at the beginning. Hard work beats talent, right? Put in the work. Always be putting in the work. Always be improving, right? And then find the clues that make those people successful and do it. All right. So this is not something that ChatGPT is going to help you. ChatGPT is going to help you find the answer. It is going to give you the solution, maybe a good explanation. But these are going to be 3 life lessons, guys, that I want you to carry away in your math class, as well as for the rest of your life.